Hi everybody, this is Silver Spook, and this is the Silver Spook video about. It's not just about Barbie, but obviously that's the screenshot that is up on the screen. Um, but it is about playing your role and breaking your role, and playing those roles under patriarchal capitalism and the ongoing SAG-AFTRA and WGA strikes. So, uh, before I forget, yeah, this is not a promotion of any particular shows or anything. This is just uh, I'm going to be talking about various aspects of the Barbie movie, obviously. But yeah, I do hope that the SAG and WGA strikers stay strong, and I hope that the studios and the giant uh, overpaid executives, and I hope that Drew Barrymore figures out what is the reality of the situation. Also, I just recently learned that Drew Barrymore, in fact, has multi-million-dollar estates in Hawaii, among other places. So, Drew Barrymore, please land back your stolen Hawaiian land with the U.S. military occupation backing. So, just before I forget, as part of the ongoing actions. But anyways, so yeah, so we were talking about like this the ongoing strikes as well as other topics during the course of the stream. But of course, like one of the things that we recently just did was we did see the Barbie movie. So Holly and myself, so we wanted to kind of comment about that. I think that the movie itself is, well, I mean, I should probably preface this by saying that I did not play with Barbies when I was a child. Like I am what is the context for it right now? I don't have time to explain too much, but I am not a cis straight person in a Western understanding. I'm a native Hawaiian, so we have a different understanding of gender. But of course, gender is going to come into this, so I should probably bring that up. And so, like, obviously, when it comes to Barbie toys, speaking of roles, right? The role of the West, you have to, the American boy, right? The American male gender is not expected to, is expected to not play with Barbies, other dolls. Obviously now Monster High, or what is the new one? The Lol dolls, or because we do have kids, so so I think of all the modern ones. But for people who are like 40, 30, well, everybody knows what Barbie is probably. But they were definitely around when I was little. But like when I was a kid, when I go into the toy store, it was expected that I would play with basically boy toys, which was the GI Joes, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, obviously, the Green Army guys. What else were their boy toys? Just anything with a kung fu action grip, wrestling stuff. He-Man was around. Transformers. Mostly things to do with doing a lot of violence, basically. Things to do with things to do with doing a gross amounts of violence, straight up military, U.S. military recruitment propaganda, like the Green Army guys and GI Joe. I guess before that it would have been cowboy toys, like my dad played with. My dad played with cowboy toys when he was little. There's pictures of my dad, wearing a cowboy hat, having his two like 6-shooter revolver cap guns and shooting him off at people and like pretending to be playing quote unquote cowboys and Indians, which obviously is deeply problematic, but for many reasons. And of course, I'm a native Hawaiian undergoing U.S. military occupation, as I said earlier. So that's forced Americanization, which is genocide. So, but it's hard to even start to go into anything without getting into all the other colonial problems. But anyways, So like, but when I was, but kids are expected, like, one place I thought would be interesting to start with is just from like how, what your, the toys that you play with are some of the first, especially under, 20th century consumer capitalist American culture. Because, I was raised in an American colony. So the toys that you're expected to play with are one of the first parts of establishing what role, right? What role you're going to play in your society, right? And the gender roles are, I mean, I would argue that like what is gender roles, right? Behaviors, attitudes, actions that society feels are appropriate or inappropriate for a man or woman, boy or girl, according to cultural norms and traditions. But the thing is, like, the gender role is like inseparable, and I've made this point I think about 6 months ago, but the gender role is inseparable from the culture in which the human participants, experiencers are involved in, right? So like, if you're growing up in a Chinese society, right? If you were growing up, in a specifically, I don't know, in the the 1700s, Fujian province, that's different from growing up in 21st century, 21st century, 21st century Sichuan, or in Taiwan, which is part of China, by the way. Those are, and so growing up as a boy in 1700s, part of China is a different experience than growing up in 21st century. The roles are, they have historical continuity, they have historical connection, but they're not the same. Growing up as an American boy in the 20th century, like 1960s, is not the same as the gender that you might be experiencing growing up as a British boy in the 1700s. One example, you're expected to wear pink, right? In a lot of Western culture, I brought that up like I think it was during the Pretty in Pink stream, and so you're expected to wear, right? So like Britain, that the British men, I made this point several times on these streams, but the British men were expected to be wearing high heels, right? Like, for example, the royalty, this is what the high heels were invented for, was to show off particular European monarchs' legs. I'm trying to find that. Where is that picture that I just had? Yeah, so like the stockings, like this guy. This is I believe that's Louis, if I'm not mistaken. High heels, the fishnets. Now he's wearing blue in this picture, but the little boys, right, until the early 20th century, were wearing pink, because red was a man's color when they grew up, and so blue was a little girl's color, right? So that was part of the gender role. Part of your expectation was you would be wearing these clothes. When you grew up, you would be wearing high heels as a man, right? Because I mean that's a big part of the Barbie movie, right? Which is, she can't take her feet out of the high heels position, right? And that's like this like to 20th, late 20th century, right? Post World War II American gender norms. The woman's role is to wear the high heel. In fact, so much so that that's like it's like iconic, and it gets at least there's at least 15 seconds of screen time devoted to an extreme close up of Barbie's feet, and the high heels specifically, right? Because the high heels is in the 20th century American culture deemed a woman's gender, a characteristic of the female gender role. So it's completely reversed, right? And so anyway, so that's why where the roles that you're playing in a culture, just in general, like, and the roles is basically the expectations of the human civilization, the human society, the milieu, the zeitgeist, the consensus reality. So and people can either play their role, they can play what is expected of them, or they can subvert, break, punk. Not sometimes it's cyberpunk, sometimes it's other kinds of punk. They can negate, they can satirize, they can make fun of, they can critique, um, they can, what do you call that? Passive aggressively, maliciously comply with the gender role. So I'll wear shoes, but I'm gonna like wear like I'm gonna wear these high heels, but I'm gonna like put blood all over them or something. Like I'm gonna wear this dress, but I'm gonna like make it. I'm gonna put like a communist symbol on it. I'm gonna wear, because you're in 20th century American, Western capitalist hegemony. So to wear a pink dress with a communist symbol on it, right? Would be, I would call it malicious compliance. If you are identified as a woman and you are trying to maliciously comply with your female gender role, you could wear a dress with a communist symbol on it. But anyways, what's up, Victor and Emma? But anyways, so your roles, and the role is not just like, the role is not just your what your clothes you're wearing, but it's also like the jobs that you do, right? What kind of employment, what kind of jobs you can get, like, and that's a big part of Barbie, right? So Barbie types, right? In the Barbie movie, or is that like they have that whole diversity? Barbie professions, yeah. Barbie professions, yeah. So like, in the movie you see all these different Barbies, right? There's the let's flight attendant Barbie. These are like older ones, but there's firefighter Barbie, there's news reporter Barbie, there's soccer player Barbie, sports Barbie, there's astronaut Barbie, there was president Barbie, there's lawyer Barbie, there's basically so like in the sense of the job, the employment, which is, well, under Western capitalism, right? The job and employment is the way that you identify the work that you do and the skills that you do in society, but under a particular system. But just kind of like which I think it's probably helpful to step back a little bit and remove the descriptor of employment, right, is already like saying something about the way that all of the culture and the society is organized, right? So for example, like, you could be a you could be a, like, a mother is not considered a job, but that's actually, it's not considered employment, right? Care worker is not considered is not deemed worthy of note, other than like except that when they really need it. Like, people will acknowledge, oh well, my mother was really important in my life and helped to I love my mother so much, but like nobody, like, it's not really the role of mother under a capitalist patriarchal civilization like the United States and Western societies. They cut that out of the they just kind of like leave it as extra work. It is deemed like lesser. It's kind of like multiple personality disorder of the West, where it's like sometimes it's lesser, sometimes it's more, depending on like what they say. They like, in the same way that like Will Ferrell's character will say, "Oh, I have a mother. I am the nephew of a woman aunt, and we had at least one CEO and maybe two at some point of the Mattel Corporation, right? And it's like I care so much about women. Like, I have lots of black friends. That's the racial one, right? But the thing is like that the role of care work, the role of mother, is not valued under capitalism, and so not to say that like it's not to say it's like a bad thing that the Barbie line, which was a part of it, obviously, and that's part of the film, what the film talks about. It was about giving little girls who previously, right, only played with, right, so like previous to Barbie, the the little girls like mostly only play with the baby dolls. I was trying to find dun, 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 dun. Like in the beginning. There's this really interesting scene in the Barbie movie where they do like a 2001 Space Odyssey reference, where these little girls there's like little girls who were only playing with baby dolls. They're basically like there are dolls that are there, right, that are for little girls to practice, cradling and pretending to breastfeed and changing the clothes of and putting in the carriage and pushing it around so that little girls become indoctrinated into their role, right? Or they get programmed, they get conditioned, right? They get educated. That's part of the education, actually, very important part of education is that when you grow up, this is the role that you will fulfill. You will fulfill the mother role, which is not important, and we're not going to pay you anything for that. And in fact, you'll be a servant / slave to your husband under patriarchy, under capitalist patriarchy. And that's great because, well, don't ask any questions. And so like the dolls prior to Barbie were about normalizing, and it's definitely a send up of Planet of the Apes where in the beginning of the Isaac Asimov, I just did Isaac Asimov stream last week on speaking that was more about the dude end of the spectrum of Western gender, which was called Flagellating While Rome Burns. So if you want to watch me talk about another Isaac, slight sidebar, you want to watch me talk about another Isaac Asimov film, because I'm not going to talk about 2001 A Space Odyssey, you can watch this video that I made last week. Which is about Foundation, the science fiction Apple TV series that has recently concluded its is it second season? Second season. But anyways, so in the 2001 Space Odyssey, you have at the beginning of the movie and also in the book. Well, I guess this is, you only really see it in the movie. There is a series of shots that like are at the dawn of time, where you have this like Australia / Iceland. Like Ridley Scott tries to replicate that in the Prometheus film in the Alien series by having this like black volcanic pre-biological life Earth, like planet, right? Still in the like way pre-Jurassic era, like when there's still the little flagellating amoebas and eukaryotic life have not quite evolved their little sperm tails, in the primordial soup, and they're mistaking, they're not very complex yet. And then all of a sudden, then you have the apes, and then the apes, it's kind of like it's a fast forward through time. And then the apes, what is it? They're smacking each other with bones, and there's apes killing each other, which is its own thing. That's another thing that happens, but it kind of implies that they're barbaric. It's also like kind of looks like Africa, so it's kind of there's some definitely colonialist racist undertones. But anyways, the apes find this giant black monolith, and they move to the next stage of evolution. And so in this one, the little girls are playing in this kind of prehistoric, primordial dawn of time desert, but they're playing with the little baby dolls. Suggesting that this is a primitive culture. And then suddenly the giant Barbie figure arrives, and all the little girls look up, and they smash all their Barbie dolls, they break all their baby bottles, they wreck their stroller, right? And they smash them to bits, and you have that epic symphonic music going that's the same as the 2001. The Barbie movie is a very film literate movie. It's a very literate movie just in general. It's Noah Baumbach and Greta Gerwig, but Noah Baumbach made that whole movie that's just all about the squid and the whale, which is just about like squids fighting whales. No, it's about the high literature nerds. Anyways, But it's got lots of references in Barbie. Is what I'm trying to say. There's lots and lots and lots of things. One of them is 2001: A Space Odyssey, and but it's kind of like implied that the Barbie moved. It's a tongue in cheek. Everything is very funny in this movie to me anyway. Maybe it's not funny to 15-year-olds. I don't know. But it's a tongue in cheek like comment that like Barbie like moved the culture moved forward the normalized women and girls roles in society. It changed it. It changed the role. It ostensibly, or at least what it was trying to do, whether it succeeded or not, that's kind of to be determined by everyone. But it was like going from just women can only be mothers. Not that that's like something wrong with that, but that is the kind of that was the kind of toys that little girls play with, to being you could be a variety of things, right? Well, this also you can't really separate Barbie also from 20th century American culture. Like I said, right? You can't separate the gender roles from the particular societies the human societies that they were constructed. They're constructed within, right? So like that's why I say like my my gender is Mahu, which is a native Hawaiian word, which is Austronesian. It's an Austronesian society, an Austronesian culture, an Austronesian gender identity that is not really equivalent to anything in Western culture, right? Now, of course, like I was forcefully Americanized, so that's where it gets complicated, and so that's where colonialism makes everything very twisted and complex and gray in many ways. But trying to pull out all of the, as Kalakoka, one of our Hawaiian activists and educational kupuna or leaders would say, it's about pulling out colonial brainworms out of your head. Anyways, but Barbie also in some ways was about trying to alter what was the normal roles that women could play, right? And so so coming back to what does Barbie have to do with this? Well, Barbie, when was Barbie invented? Created, or not really invented, but created. So Barbie was first created in March 9th, 1959, right? The doll made its debut then in 1959. It was used as Barbie's official birthday still. The first Barbie doll wore a black and white zebra striped swimsuit and signature top knot ponytail, and was available as either blonde or brunette. The doll was marketed as teenage fashion model. The clothes were created by Mattel fashion designer Charlotte Johnson. The first Barbie dolls were manufactured in Japan with their clothes hand-stitched by Japanese home workers. Around 350,000 Barbie dolls were sold during the first year. So also important to remember that, like, I think the Barbie doll, the original body for the Barbie doll was actually a German sex doll that was used for like pranks, apparently. From what I could gather, the physical body itself was a kind of caricature of what a straight German man would think would be a sexy woman, and so that's also important as well, right? That's kind of like the kind of like somewhat unusually proportioned body was because of the doll was a sex doll. And then it was reworked into a teenage fashion, what was thought of as a teenage fashion model, and it's in the 50s. And it's important so you can't separate that from the 50s and then the 60s, right? Which was a time of great, where there was a time of a lot of people in the United States. We're specifically talking about post World War II America, right? Where you had the 50s, you had the civil rights movement, you had Woodstock, you had women, sexual liberation, right? And this idea that like if we could, the breaking of the roles, right? So like women's let me just get that. So throughout the 50s, 60s, 70s, many women began to demand greater sexual freedom and control over their bodies. After centuries of expected chastity and modesty, the sexual revolution and the availability of the pill allowed women to explore their sexuality without fear of pregnancy. And not just that, right? There's many other things. The feminist movements, right? Social and political movement that sought to establish equality for women in general. But and so the free love idea, which was definitely a '60s thing, right? A social movement that accepts all forms of love. The initial goal was to separate the state from sexual and romantic matters such as marriage, birth control, and adultery. Such issues were the concern of people involved and no one else. And and the '60s, right? So if Barbie came out in '59, Barbie was coming straight into the 1960s. It basically was its beginnings were a '60s phenomenon, which is also a mid 20th century American phenomenon, right? And so part of it was the sexual and romantic matters of marriage, birth control, adultery, questioning. It was about questioning the roles in society that people would be fulfilling, right? The expected role, right, for Western society was, if you were a woman, you would grow up, you would marry a man, and then you would be his property, and you would make babies for him, you would cook and clean for him, and you would all live happily ever after, or ideally you would buy 25 toasters, 65 cars, as a TV in a household, and you would iron his clothes when he would go to his job, and then we would be there, and you would have dinner ready when we came home, and you would be in a monogamous cis heterosexual marriage, and you would live and you would make more babies, ideally white babies, because it's a white supremacist, capitalist, colonialist America, and then you would replicate that, ad infinitum, right? That was the role that you were, as a woman, you're expected to play, and obviously the man had his own role that he was expected to play, and so church interference, state interference, and so the free unions of adults are legitimate relations which should be respected by all third parties, whether they are emotional or sexual relations. In addition, from free love argue that both men and women have the right to sexual pleasure without social or legal restraints. In the Victorian era, this was a radical notion. Later, the theme developed, linking free love with radical social change and depicting it as a harbinger of a new anti-authoritarian, anti-repressive sensibility. Anyway, there's a lot you could say about it, but those incoming those incoming movements in American culture, right, were part of the zeitgeist that Barbie entered into, right, and that Barbie both influenced and also was influenced by. So in the interplay of the consumerist giant American corporation's toy and the culture that it was working upon. But so Barbie in that sense was a toy that did alter, or would try to alter, the roles that would be deemed acceptable for women to fulfill, right? So they didn't just have to be a mother. They could be having free love. They could be independent. They might not actually be owned by a man necessarily, right? Because in Barbie's world, Barbie doesn't it's not Ken's house, it's Barbie's house, right? It's not Ken's car, it's Barbie's car, and Ken gets to ride in it, right? So Ken in the Barbie world, and you see that it does come out in the movie, and the Barbie is kind of in some senses embodiment of not obviously many feminists would not feminism is not a monolith like Hawaiians or African people, but some of the feminists would have said that the Barbie the feminist movement itself in some ways is represented by the Barbie figure, because it was about changing the accepted women's role from being the property of a man that is basically a future white man fetus incubator. That's basically a woman's role, right? And then in-house domestic permanent indentured servant / white fetus incubator. That was the role of women basically, and then also sexual pleasure, basically prostitute slave incubator. in exchange for ostensibly, right? Um, right. As you see in Don't Worry, Darling and Stepford Wives, right? In exchange, ostensibly for financial stability, a roof, your meals, and not being economically unstable, because the man would be bringing home the bread. Um, you would have a house and you would have your appliances and you'd have electricity and food and all your basic needs met. But you had to basically become enslaved to the man, and that was part of the ostensibly the deal. And and so the Barbie was about breaking, a lot of that. Or I mean, whether it did or not, right? Actually, the movie doesn't really. The movie question, like, the movie doesn't question. The movie just brings to the reality that patriarchy isn't gone, capitalism is gone, gender roles aren't gone. A lot of these things are not gone, but obviously that was what some people thought might happen. If the children were growing up playing with different toys, right? Anyways, well, let me come back to it so I don't dawdle too long on any particular topic. So Barbie's character is, obviously in the movie itself. Barbie is kind of like it's like a ideal plastic. She's literally like, it's a life size. Margot Robbie's playing a life size Barbie in a literally constructed, which is pretty amazing. I mean, it's a lot of, like, one thing we can definitely say about this movie is that it is a triumph of actual artists, people who have a love for storytelling and art and acting and creation, because it's telling a story. A lot of it, think about it now, I gotta spend so much time making, because I'm working on games, and a lot of it is like trying to selling things visual, like writing things. Well, writing things can take time and a lot of energy, but trying to sell something visually takes so much effort and time to like, for example, like how the Barbie sets, like, and there's lots of documentaries and videos about this, right? The Barbie sets were completely Barbie set design. So the Barbie set designers actually like spent like so many hours, right, to actually physically recreate all of these sets. The production team embraced surreal, going big and bright on pinks and shrunken proportions. But trying to find like where if I get some details about. So everything is considered. Gehrig on the board of the project as bona fide Barbie aficionado. Greenwood and Spencer had no personal history with. Trying to find the. We ought to believe in it as much as if it was a space movie or a period movie. We had to research it as though it was a set in 1780. So it was like meticulously researched and meticulously like designed, and they tried a lot of different things, and then tried to figure out what did work, what didn't work. They studied a vintage Barbie's dream house, finding it to be much more cramped than they anticipated. And so they had to kind of like, they wanted to, because they really wanted to physically recreate the actual toys, or make it like you're literally inside of a animated toy universe, right? And so the films were, the dream houses were 23% smaller than they would be, as are the cards and roads. When you scale the house down, you make the actors like Margot Ryan seem bigger, which makes the whole thing seem toy-like. And so once you've done that once or twice, the moments and so it's kind of like, so everything from when Barbie opens her refrigerator, most of the food are simply flat cartoon decals. Her oversized cup contains no liquid. Her shower, when she turns it on, no water comes out. Barbies don't drink, right? And the size of her toothbrush is exaggerated, like a proper child might find in a dollhouse. There's lots of other things, like there's no water in Barbie Land. There's just like a flat blue pool. So it's like she's living in a plastic world. She doesn't eat, she doesn't drink, she doesn't do anything, right? She's literally like a life in plastic. Like all of that is like really really neat. Like a lot of that's like very like, that's like the real. It's like pretty, like you could probably just like marvel at like all of that for a while as part of the movie. There's also a story happening, but that's like so much thinking and creativity and design, set design. If somebody had to paint all of that, somebody had to construct all of that, somebody had to plan all of that. It was like, that's like, it's definitely like a sci-fi movie, like Star Wars, like recreating. Well, Tatooine is in a desert, but creating all of these Ewoks and the Jawas and C-3PO, R2-D2, the puppeteering of all that. making tiny little miniaturized Death Stars, Star Destroyers, and X-wings, and then filming that, figuring out how to do that in a way that it's like, it doesn't have to be perfectly convincing, but it's like a real universe. That kind of stuff is like very difficult, and so as somebody who does that for a living, I try to make, as a one-person indie dev, like Neofeud is an anti-capitalist, anti-imperialist cyberpunk adventure game, but it's also a lot of set design, mostly in Photoshop, and a lot of animation design. I'm working on so much all the time. It's like most of my day actually is doing that. So like when you see like this entire realized world where, and you have like, this is weird Barbie, like Kate McKinnon is hilarious. Everyone is really funny. Ryan Gosling is also hilarious. Oh, all the sets, just in case I forget, like all the sets, like there's a beach set that's like plastic blue. Somebody painted an entire massive Hollywood studio set with the blue with blue sky, with white blue sky, like like azure sky, and then like bright white clouds. People painted. There's like Barbie. What were the other ones? There was the clouds. There was the that's basically that one. You have like the pink mountains in the background. Somebody had to paint in gaming, it's the skybox. The skybox is like came from Hollywood sound stages, I guess. See if I can get that. The Barbie background. Wait, Barbie movie set painting. See if I can get like just like a bunch of those. Because this is the beach one. There's one in there's some other ones that are like in different places. There's the nighttime set. Well, I guess the nighttime set is just they darken the lights. But everything is plastic in this. It's all fake. So that's just like an amazing amount of work. And it is all physically constructed. So that's that's pretty incredible. Another movie that we recently watched actually was also I know I've already dropped like 3 other movies, but Asteroid City is another movie that Holly and I recently watched. And actually, Asteroid City, I feel like I don't know this for a fact. This is just like a gut feeling, but as you can see the mountains being painted in the back there. So like Asteroid City is also super bright and it's definitely like filmed inside of a Hollywood room where they're painting. Like if you look at the clouds and you look at the scenes, it's definitely like it's a old school Hollywood stage. Like if you ever seen Grapes of Wrath or like those old movies or Wizard of Oz, it has a feeling like that because everything in those sets are constructed inside of a studio, right? And then somebody had to go and physically paint or take images and then get them printed out and constructed. But I think actually a lot of this people actually have to paint that on the wall. And also all the houses are like physically constructed, so it's like you're inside of a completely fake town. Like all of Asteroid City feels like it's in a plastic set. But that's what Wes Anderson does. Like all of his movies, like Our Life Aquatic. This might be the Asteroid City might be the most like stage play set like, but every one of his movies has some aspect of that, with the exception of Bottle Rocket possibly. But anyways, movie nerd shit aside, I was involved in a constructed practicum in my freshman year of college called the Director's Prerogative, where we went back and watched like all the Kurosawa and all the Hitchcock and all the classic movies, and then studied film. I have been a film nerd for a long time. But anyways, so I should stop going too deep into that, otherwise I'll get lost. But so the Barbie gender roles, coming back to that topic, I kind of left off on Barbie's house. So Barbie's house, that is her house, right? Barbie floats from the top of her house into Barbie's car, right? And those are Barbie's. Those are Barbies. Those are not Ken's, right? So that is breaking. That's already breaking the norm where women are property, right? In American patriarchal culture, women don't own property, right? And now, of course, like you could still have capitalism continuant and even you could have shadow patriarchy that actually does come, or like kind of more hidden patriarchy that comes up in Barbie as well. There's a scene where Will Ferrell, or somebody, oh no, sorry, Ryan Gosling as Ken. Right, Will Ferrell plays the CEO in Barbie, right, and him and all of his fellow executives are being childish dickheads. Will Ferrell was also in Lego Movie. This Barbie has a lot. Obviously, it's a movie that is inspired by and is part of promoting a toy, Lego and Barbie respectively. But Will Ferrell, and he plays Lord Business also, of course, in the Lego Movie. There's a lot of similarities. It's all from a kid's perspective. It's like a very realized with humor and pithy commentary that adults can get, but it's also a kids movie that kids can watch. That's a major similarity between Barbie and Lego. But Will Ferrell's character is he makes a comment like, well, we have Barbie says like, what about the women who run your company, right? Why are there no Barbie CEOs? And he's like, well, I take offense to that. We had in the 90s we had one, and then there was another one again, and well, how you stop being so mean, you Jezebel. So stop being mean to me, right? So that's one of the parts where that comment is made. The other one is there's a scene where Ken by Ryan Gosling he comes into an office at one point to try to get a job. He comes to his office. Ken he's been living inside of Barbie's world, which is, it's a matriarch. It fundamentally is. Like the president is a woman. Everyone who's in charge is a woman, and the Kens are literally just there as they're just kind of accessories to the women, right? So it's kind of a mirror world. It's not necessarily a matriarchy, or it's not necessarily like gender equality in the way of some other non-patriarchal cultures. It's more like just it's more just kind of like an inverted American culture, which is not equal. Obviously, it's an inverted Western culture, which is so it's not, and like that does come up where like maybe and like later on in the movie, like Barbie says, sorry that I never really acknowledged your presence very much at all, or like you had because that is like Ken that's part of Ken's arc, is Ken doesn't have any Ken is nothing without Barbie, right? Like literally. He's and Ken. He's not there's no just Ken, right? That's like a whole, and Ryan Gosling does an amazing musical number with all of his Ken brothers, right? They take, all the Kens, right? All the Kens take each other's manly hands, and they do ballet, and they kiss each other in a very manly way. And they attack each other by opening their shirts and causing each other to be blown away by their abs. It's kind of that. There's like so much funny stuff in this. It's hilarious. But so Ken, when he learns about patriarchy, because he's been living under not patriarchy in Barbie world, he comes to the real world and learns about patriarchy, and he's like, how am I, are you guys doing patriarchy in this building here? Because I want to join your business world where you men are doing the business under a patriarchy, and people like recognize you and they like you and everything is great for men. And the corporate suit guy in the front of the building is like, oh well, we're hiring some women now because it's and then Ken's like, well, you're doing patriarchy wrong then. And the guy's like, oh no, don't worry about it. No, we hire women for the lower level jobs, but at the top, everybody who really runs things and makes the big bucks, those are all still men. So we're still doing patriarchy. So there's actually a comment is like, just because you have women as part of the point is like if women can fulfill, right? If Barbie is about showing that women can fulfill other roles. Where's my dolls? I lost my dolls. Right? If Barbie is about showing that women can fulfill other roles other than simply being, mothers and fetus incubator, cooking and cleaning slave, and forced non-consensual sex worker. And if you can show that women can be astronauts and news reporters, journalists and firefighters and presidents and all these things, then patriarchy will be over, right? But the thing is, like, the men feel out in a way. No, well, we can have lots of women doing lots of this other work, and that's a slight concession. But what we'll do is it's kind of like what the UAW, what Hollywood studios, and also what game companies and universities have done, right? I don't know if Big Teal's here, but we know we have some women professors. Professor Barbie. We have some Professor Barbies up in here sometimes. And so what the universities have done is, like Hollywood studios, is they made a 2-tier system, right? And then you can maintain a shadow patriarchy, right? So then you have women professors who are actually teaching women and non-white people teach 75% of all college classes now. And then people can still you see, look, there's lots of women in the professor jobs where it used to be all white men. But the thing is, the women are teaching as adjunct professors, as temp professors, and they're like literally not paid enough to even afford apartments, and they're getting evicted and have to live on food stamps or go to the food bank every single day, right? And I know there's many of these. That's like statistically 60% of professors were food insecure. So Professor Barbie she's able to fulfill the role of professor, and women are fulfilling roles of professors, but the patriarchy is still maintained because the tenured professors, the upper administrators who actually make the big monies, right? What they did was those people are still all white men, and disproportionately older, right? The administrator and they don't actually do the teaching of the classes anymore. So what you have is you have a capitalist labor aristocracy that is deeply misogynistic and racist. But you can make it seem as though you have a diverse world. And same thing for the Hollywood, right? It's like all the writers, right? So you have like Hollywood, the writers, right? The Hollywood writers that are still on strike. If you look at who the writers actually are, like a lot of the writers are women. A lot of the writers are not white people, right? The WGA is a very diverse. The writers are a very diverse group of people. But the thing is that the people who are actually making the big money, right? There are some, but those are like the lead writers, the showrunners, the directors, like the Benioff kids who are descendants of a tech billionaire that ran Game of Thrones. The writers who are making the showrunners that make the big bucks on the what's the other ones? All the Marvel movies. At the top of the pyramid is still white men. Like Anthony Mackie even said, yeah, they have black people in front. There's women in front in the new movies, in the Avengers and new Hollywood movies. But 98% of everyone who calls the shots, and the producers, the people who make the biggest money and actually decide what goes in and doesn't go in movies, it's all white men. 98%. He said white people were the people at the after parties. No matter how many people of color are in the front. And similarly, so you can have women that are writers, women that are directors, women that are actors. Obviously, there's always actresses, but women can fulfill all these different roles. They can be professors. Women can be auto workers. Women engineer Barbie, right? Women are right. You see this video of the UAW strike? Like women are UAW strikers, but what's happening? What's happening in the UAW is that the senior workers, the 2-tier system, UPS was the same way. They're older, whiter men that have the bigger pay, and what they're paid to do is basically tell all the other, the lower tier, mostly women, mostly non-white people, who actually do the brunt of the work, right? To not strike. So you have a management labor aristocracy. They're even called workers, but they don't do any work sometimes, right? There are professors who are called professors, but they don't profess, right? They just sit around and talk to other white men, kind of like Mad Men, white patriarchal office dudes, right? That there are entire TV shows about how terrible this capitalist patriarchy was, right? You had all professions have women in them, but they're still run like capitalist white men run patriarchal offices. but in like in a more complex, more subverted, more cleverly shrouded way, right? It's not as overt, like, oh, the women are all secretaries that are sex objects, and then like they're sex objects in the office while the man is off away from his white man incubator. That's his wife inside of his Stepford Wives home in mid 20th century America, right? So you have the sex slave in the office, then you have another sex slave at home, and then the incubator at home, and then you cheating with all the secretaries, right? Now instead of that, what you have is you have lots of people of varieties of genders and a variety of ethnicities. They're all working in their offices and they're all working in engineers. But then now there's tiers, right? There's the tenured and then there's the untenured. There's the permanent temp, writer, auto worker, permanent temp, writer, auto worker, and professor. And then there's the tenured, made man, labor aristocrat, white man, right? They're not all white men, but most of them are. And they're going to put a few up there, just like the Barbie movie says. They're going to put like, oh yeah, we have at least like 3 out of 100 that are women and not white on the top. So, and so that's where like, so that's part of, I think so like that reality, and that's part of what the UAW is striking now, is just saying we want to end to the tiers, right? We don't want this 2-tier system where you have the upper aristocrat workers, right? Let me see. They want a 32-hour week, 40 hours a day, restoration of defined benefit pension. New hires not only receive 401k style retirement plans, and return of cost of living pay raises. And they want to end to varying tiers of wages, right? And so UPS had that as well. UPS wanted to end. So everyone is kind of coming. The good news is everybody's coming together to strike to end that tier system. But anyways, so I just wanted to kind of like highlight how the roles that in society, right, that Barbie thought would be broken, or I should say like, it's in a dialectical relationship. So the society, the people in the society go like, well, we need free love. We need to break this nuclear Western family for patriarchal capitalism, and we need to have women doing not simply having it normalized that they can only be God damn it, I can't find my goddamn toys. I'm losing all my toys. I can never find my toys. Where's my freaking, there it is. So in the 20th century, Barbies were like, well, women can fulfill all these jobs, and then that the toys like start altering, not just the toys. There's toys plus many other factors in society, right? Education, and then there's the 60s, and then you have like decolonizational movements, and the United States' lack of the way that it responds or doesn't respond impact how people react. The U.S. cracks down hard on civil rights and women's rights, then the people respond more, or if they give them what they want, different things happen. And so when the toys come out, suddenly women are like wanting more of these jobs, and so then the white patriarchal capitalist world goes, well, we better do something about this. Okay, well, let's bring some women and some people of color into some of these jobs. Okay, but then we'll 2-tier the jobs, so that way the old boys smoking jacket skull and bones club network of useless Elon Musk like golf playing, right, losers who have all the money and all the power, kind of like Will Ferrell's character. Will Ferrell's character is very important because Will Ferrell's character does represent the uselessness of the old white upper class man, which is like he's completely clueless. There's a scene where Will Ferrell and all of his fellow executives, right, that are trying to get through the turnstile at the outside of their building. It's a great scene because it's like, where is that one? They're looking for a key card. I can't know if I'm able to find it. Will Ferrell executives. Like there's several scenes, but like it's basically like it's like they're all white men, or like one Indian man, 2 Indian men, 1 black guy maybe, but they're all men. Most of them are white. They're all in suits, right? And there's a scene where Will Ferrell and his fellow his fellow white dudes, and all, but they're basically all dudes with like one or two not white ones, maybe one Asian one, or like, you know, and they're like trying to get out of the building, and then like it's a turnstile, right? So you could just jump over it, right? They're chasing Barbie. They have to get Barbie back, or it's the end of the world, right? And then they get stuck by the turnstile, like, oh my god, where's the key card? And everybody's like just trying to kiss up to his ass the whole time. All the other men in their suits with their parted hair, and they look like they're running Sony or Disney, or they look like Elon Musk. They look like they're gonna get paid $50 million this year as the CEO of GM. You know, like I think it was that the GM has the token woman CEO right now, so that they can seem like they're not a patriarchy still in the U.S. And so all the dudes are all this. They're like they're just completely incompetent, useless people. There's like one part where they're like, Barbie whispers to one of them, and then there's a whisper circle where all the guys whisper to each other, right? And like it's like watching the French court in the 1700s, where it's like each of the men who have ascended up the neo-feudal pyramid of dynastic capitalist white heteropatriarchal wealth have to like make sure that they have their part to play in the court that is the boardroom. The new feudal court is the boardroom, right? And so they're all like kind of like, what they're doing is useless. I mean, Barbie could just say, to whisper to Will Ferrell, but everybody has to have their part so they can all play the kiss ass game. But this is like the kiss ass game at the top of at the academia, where it's all about getting the right footnotes and getting the right white man professor, right, at Harvard or NYU to lay his popely university professor his tenured hands on you, right, and give you the prestige that you need so that you can accelerate your career, right. And it's why a lot of young academics are like, I need this job, but fuck, I hate university, because the university is just a giant private equity hedge fund, global capitalist scheme pretending to be an education system in the West. Big Deal is now, so. But that's what it's about. It's like that scene's like I like there's like several scenes with that where it's like, it's like this is what the boardroom is about, right? The company meetings are not about, company meetings are not about the company and all the personnel and the workers, like where the white man CEO and the vice president all show up. It's not about the workers learning something, having the vision of the company established, guiding the company in the right direction, right? The purpose of when the CEO and the executives show up, right, in a Western patriarchal capitalist corporate business or university, which is, they're all businesses, or even a nonprofit, they're all white capitalist Western horrible business, capitalist exploitative businesses. When the CEO shows up, it's about maintaining the hierarchy and allowing the future, almost certainly white dude, children of the billionaire class, right, and the millionaire class, a chance to brown nose their way after the presentation, after the PowerPoint, whatever. We're making record profits in this hospital. We're making record profits in GM, and all of the other white men, right, who have no skill whatsoever, get to kiss ass with the giant baby, right, waving his drumsticks in the air, right, and they get to see who, like, this is like all the all the white men Twitter CEOs, or sometimes they're Indian nowadays, like Nikki Haley. They're Indian pretending to be white, right? Sometimes they run for Republican president candidate, but sometimes they're just CEOs of like Sundar Pichai. Sometimes they run for the Indian, sometimes they run for head of state of the UK, like Rishi Sunak or whatever that clown is. But what they do is what Rishi Sunak has is head up the British monarchy's ass, and also the American president's ass, and all the American billionaires' ass, so that he can get his job, because America owns Britain. And so the purpose of the big meetings, right, is so that all of the useless white upper crust capitalist, feudalist, colonialist, white supremacist descendants can see who can stick their nose deeper up the head clown's ass, right? So if you tell Elon, I love that idea where you said that the Cybertruck should have like 3 foot, like 2-inch thick windows. I mean, yes, it's completely unnecessary, not feasible, and ridiculous. But I'm gonna tell you, Elon, that you're a fucking genius, Elon Musk, richest man in the world, because if I tell you that you're smart and awesome and good, actually, in the whisper, then I have as the nephew of Bill Gates, the probability that I will, escalate my career closer to you. This is how feudal Europe worked, right? The prince, like, this is like, trying to marry you're the heir of a small, borough in somewhere in the UK, or you're like the Austrian, like, not even a queen or a king. You're just you're just a lord or a lady of some lower house. You're a countess from Italy, and you want to marry up higher, right? You want to marry higher up into the ranks, right? So in the French court, you want to lean into the Louis XIV's ear and get closer, right? By kissing his ass harder, even though he's a complete useless clown, right? Just like Elon and just like Will Ferrell's character. And so if you tell the useless, sociopathic, murderous clown in the barbarian, planet-stealing empire, British, French, Spanish, American, that you're in, right? Who can only a London Big Ben and a Parisian Eiffel Tower and an American skyscraper can only be built by stealing 8 billion people's wealth, right? Very, very inefficient system, the Western capitalist system and the feudalist system, which are the same system. But if you tell that person the right things at the right time, if you kiss ass hard enough, right? Not be honest, not tell the truth, right? You just kiss ass up hard enough, right? And then punch down hard enough, right? If you beat your workers up like the CEO of GM, who makes $30+ million this year, right? While the auto companies are making billions in profits. If you punch, literally the job of a CEO, right, is the job of a lord and lady. Beat up your serfs to squeeze enough money from the peasants. Beat up the auto workers enough to squeeze enough money from the peasants so that you can make this, like in the 1700s, they wouldn't make a chart or a graph because they didn't have Excel spreadsheet and printer paper. What they would do is the vassals of the king would say, "Hey Lord, look how much money I made. And look at this beautiful things that I have. And here's a bunch of it. Can you like escalate me? Can you give me more titles? I'll squeeze more money from more peasants. I'm sorry. I will extract more surplus labor value from more GM workers. If you like give me a higher level job." Right? So that, like, the corporate structure is the same as the feudal structure. It's literally identical. It just the feudal structure in a dialectical way has evolved to respond to revolutionary activity and deep upset when the Marie Antoinette era people like screwed up, and then they morphed into capitalism. But it's the same European system. It's the same unjust, barbaric European patriarchal system. And then today, it's in the same way that like the Barbie doll, the women's attack on patriarchy of like, we have to let women be all these different jobs. Then their response to that was, well, we'll have a 2-tier system. We'll have the shadow patriarchy. In the same way that capitalism is a shadow feudal system. Oh my God, they're chopping heads off of royalty in all of our beautiful palaces. Everybody put on black suits on, so it's not obvious that we're unjust rulers wearing golden crowns with stolen African rubies and all of these ridiculous ermine capes that takes 100,000 endangered snails pigment from their body to make one, right? Put on the black suit. The black suit it was a ruling class attack to negate the movements to actually produce a just society in Europe and in the West and Euro settler colonies in Japan and India as a part of that now, unfortunately. That's why there's so many Indians in the CEOs from India, unfortunately. I wish they would get more on the side of socialism and revolutionary anti-imperialism, but anyways. So Will Ferrell's character, that's why I actually think it's like actually very important that he shows up in that. Not Will Ferrell himself. I mean, he's a comedian, but I'm like the character that he's playing inside of this, and he does a good job. But it's like these are all useless people, and they run the United States, right? Elon Musk and Bill Gates, they run U.S. more than Biden, right? That's why President Xi Jinping of a functioning society, advanced civilization like China, have to meet up under a socialist, anti-imperialist, Communist Party of China. They have to meet with Bill Gates and Elon, right? Xi Jinping didn't want to meet with any of the president or his cabinet because these people are useless. These people are less than useless. They're just puppets of the military-industrial complex and the billionaires. So that's why Xi Jinping met with the Will Ferrells of America, Elon Musk, the absolute clowns, right? Who run the United States, just like they ran Europe. So, but anyway, if it's not clear, I don't think this is a good system that the U.S. has and the West has, and that forced down Hawaii's throat. So, anyways, so that's the communist. That's the hammer and sickle on my Barbie dress that you cannot see. That's malicious compliance. But anyways, so back to the thing. So playing your role. So part of playing your man role is to play the role of the executive, so the white man, upper class white man role. Part of playing your role as a woman is to just simply be subservient under that, right? Part of playing your role as a person of color, if you're a black person, is to be a non-human. Is to be an animal that is a beast of burden, basically, or just to like stop existing. That's why the U.S. loves killing black people with its police and also just the average white citizen. And you know, and at best, your job as a black person is to be the underpaid, lowest level of the barrel worker laborers. Maybe you can be in the military and go kill people for the United States. If you're a brown person, that's also your job, is to be under the table. I just brought in, threat of deportation, $3 an hour slave labor. If you are, so the role that you're playing in the society. Now they don't have dolls for, South and Central American and East Asian migrants that are doing all the essential labor, the essential healthcare labor, nursing, food system labor that without which everyone perishes. They don't have dolls for them, right? But what they do have is threats, punching people, beating them, hitting them in the face, like Maui Pineapple did in 2000s, and the U.S. still does in Hawaii today. They just have threats. But if you're like a white person, then you get dolls. If you're a native citizen or white, or you're considered white, or you're part of the new diverse American project, right? You're considered a full citizen, then you get dolls to teach you what your roles are in the society. Or you get video games, or you get toys, you get movies to teach you what your roles are in the society. And so, but let's come back to specifically Barbie stuff. So, what else do I want to say? So I think like that so like the movie does kind of deal with that. I don't want to give you the whole plot because maybe you might see it, but it's Barbie leaves this world that ostensibly but like in Barbie land, the Barbies all talk to each other like, isn't it great that the human world, which they understand is a thing that's real, but it's like a mirror universe through some kind of multiversal plane that they're not sure how to break through till later with the help of Weird Barbie. And so the Barbies have to, the Barbies are like, isn't it great that now that we're all great role models for those human girls to, live in a world where women are equal and can do all the jobs that men can do, right? And are subservient, right? And don't have unfair pay, right? And then Barbie leaves that world, goes to the real world, human world, and realizes, oh my God, it's not like that. And like one of the first things is like, wow, it's like the second I leave Barbie's world, and we used to get Barbie in human world. So like the second is that you probably seen it in the previews, right? With their rollerblades, right? They're like construction worker high vis. Is that chartreuse? I don't know. It's high vis highlighter yellow. That looks like 90s highlighter yellow. That's what it looks like to me. And so Barbie and Ken like leave and they come to the real world. They're in they're in Malibu? Are they in Malibu or in Long Beach? I forget. And so they're in Los Angeles on the beach, rollerblading down, and Barbie's like, wow, I suddenly feel like a constant anxiety and like an undertone of violence in everything. Implied violence in everything that people are saying, right? Because all the guys are like leering at her and like making comments, and Ken's like, wow, this is amazing. Like, I'm just like noticed that I'm like a cool normal human dude. I'm because like in Barbie's world, like he's never noticed, right? And so but the tension that he's getting is not violent and threatening, and Barbie's like, I don't really like this, and Ken's like, oh wow, this, what are you talking about? I don't notice any of that. It's a very like She-Hulk scene where like I talked about that part of She-Hulk where it's like, the constant threat of you could be have a guy could creep on you, stalk you, do something violent to you at any time, and the catcalling is for guys, they don't, many guys will not recognize that is it is there is an undertone of violence implied in that. They won't read that. But in the Barbie movie, it's kind of like because you're a lot of the movie you're seeing it from Barbie's perspective, and some of it you're kind of following Ken more. But you're like they have two different experiences of being in the world, right? One of them is like, wow, this is not good. This is actually noticeably different, because like in Barbie's world, there's none of that, right? In Barbie's world, in the Barbie land, in the non-patriarchy world, right? I don't know what exactly it would be classified as. This is a toy world, but in the non-patriarchy world, the Kens are like, just one example, like Barbie and Ken are like, hey, Ken's like, hey Barbie, hey Barbie, can I come over to your house tonight? And Barbie's like, or they get in their cowboy hat, and Barbie's like, why do you want to come over for? Yeah, I think it's this scene, yeah. And Barbie's like, and Ken's like, well, I don't know actually. So the Kens in Barbie world, they don't have genitals, right? None of them have genitals. They're all plastic. And so and every night is girls' night at Barbie's house. Also, that's another thing, right? So Ken's character is never. Well, I mean, they're plastic toys, so they're not, like sex isn't a thing, and lots of other things related to that. Those aren't things for them, and so it's definitely like the way that a little girl would like view toys. It's very like Barbie kind of like is like the little girl that's playing with her in many ways, and Ken is kind of a construction in the head of a little girl in some senses. But they're also kind of like they're like manifestations of ideas, isn't in another way. It's complicated, but anyway, I don't want to get too deep into the metaphysical weeds and the philosophical conundrums. But Barbie and Ken, he doesn't stay over. It's always Barbie's night, right? So that's one of the things that Ken isn't happy about, and like you kind of get that where Ken is like, he's like there, but he's not really. He's there, like he's with Barbie in the car sometimes, comes into Barbie's house sometimes, is with Barbie at the beach, is trying to get noticed by Barbie. Barbie is sometimes noticing. If Barbie notices him, then it's the best day ever, and then his life is fulfilled. But if Barbie doesn't notice him, then he's not feeling very good, right? If Barbie notices another Ken, like the Simu Liu Ken, right, then Ken gets mad, right, and then the confrontation happens, right? Then there's the Ken pissing match where the Simu Liu and the other Ken are like kind of fighting over the main Barbie, the original ordinary Barbie. I think it's just like normal Barbie, and so stereotypical Barbie, yeah. She kind of looks most like the OG Barbie, stereotypical Barbie, and so Ken and all the Kens are kind of they're always just kind of like at loose ends, right? So that's like so obviously like, so I don't want to say Barbie's world is a matriarchy, because that's not really what it is either. It's kind of just like it's kind of a halfway a little girl's imagination while playing with Barbie land realized, right? But then spun out, and then kind of like a little bit of like writers have like written a little drama into that, is basically what it is, right? It's not, because I feel like in some matriarchal or like more gender equal societies, it's not really a perfect society, but in matriarchal, like Hawaiian society, the dudes would not be so pissed off all the time in that way, like because part of the deal with Ken in Barbie's world is he doesn't like he is lost, he's like deeply lost, like he doesn't know what his role is, or his role is to kind of just be around Barbie, and to be an accessory to Barbie, but that's not, that's also like not a real life for himself. You know what I'm saying? And like that's part of what Barbie tells Ken is like, Ken, you have to figure out who you are. You can't like, and Ken is like, oh, I know now I bend you over and kiss you. Or it's like, no, that's not like your life cannot be you cannot become whole because you get me like kissing the girl at the end of a movie, right? Like that's like a specific part of the movie. Where it's like, Ken, you can't just like feel like your life is complete because you got a girlfriend or got a wife. You have to like be something, in and of yourself, like just as Ken, and like that's like a thing that like is like that's like one of the hardest part for things. Like he's like has to keep like fighting that in his head that like he's kind of like lurching from thing to thing. Like he's just an accessory. He doesn't know what he's doing, fighting with the other Kens over the Barbie sometimes, right? And that's the part that's the funny scene where he's like, I'll beat you off, and he's like, no, you won't, I'll beat you off. And he's like, oh, and it's like, you're not beating anyone off without me. And it's like, well, why don't you go beat yourself off? And he's like, I'll beat you both off. And it's like, oh my god, that's the part where it's like, it's definitely like it's funny for adults, but then also kids can watch it. There's nothing actually like explicit in that way. There's no real actual violence. People only get shot with like rubber sticky Nerf bullets, and they fight each other with tennis rackets and like give each other like noogies. That's all that happens in the movie. It's like all these grown men that have been action stars that are just all they're doing is like little kid. It's like little kid play fight, but even tamer than that, because I have kids that sometimes have played fight, and they play fighting is more violent than what Ryan Gosling and Simu Liu do. I maybe read a chat. Imagine of this about a black Barbie. I wonder if folks would lose their minds. I mean, indeed, there is a black Barbie. The President Barbie is black. There's actually more than one. There's actually this. They do have like a lot of different Barbies to represent all the different types of people. There is a President Barbie, and then there is what's the other Barbie? There's President Barbie, and then there is disabled Barbie. There is a trans Barbie, and then there is Ben Shapiro. Really did not like that. A lot of right wingers did not like that. Yeah, there's a whole wide array of Barbies. But again, just having a president in a movie doesn't necessarily make, and even having a black president doesn't make the world a better place. Even having a black woman president, or we have a black woman vice president, that doesn't solve racism and misogyny and patriarchy. Anyways, though, so Barbie's character is so that's a lot of the movie is Ken trying to figure out part of it's Barbie's journey, but Ken as one of like the main antagonists for a lot of the movie is trying to figure out what he's gonna be, because he can't just be Barbie's accessory. He can't just get Barbie. That's not the solution. And he also can't he can't just be a patriarch. He's really a deeply troubled person. But the men's are deeply troubled. There is a lot of, but the thing is, like, it in the real world present, not in the movie. I mean, like in the real world present, there's a lot of deep trouble for men in the world, especially certainly. I can't speak outside of the Western world that I know and the Western colonized, unfortunately, parts of Hawaii that I'm in, but like it is like, if the world has been deeply patriarchal as a whole in multiple cultures, but definitely in American culture and definitely in Western culture, coming out of a patriarchy is going to require a lot of searching. It's going to require a lot of creativity. It's kind of figuring out what men will become after being in a patriarchal world for the last centuries and millennia, right? Figuring out what the male gender is, not what the gender is, but figuring out what the male roles in society will be, is gonna be a not easy thing, and the more patriarchal your local family, your family you're in, your local town, your state, your country, your communities are, the harder that's gonna be. And that's why a lot of men just like are like just losing it. They're going off. They're like taking whatever pills that, I'm not talking about the certain colors of pills, men going their own way. This all these, the global right in part does the U.S. imperialism and the intelligence industrial complex, like pushing far right candidates around the world. But in part, it's also because there is a fear in men that like they're losing what they had. They're losing what they had, but what they had was never good or just or moral, right? And they want to go back to that. That's Donald Trump. That's Brexit. That's all the right populist movements. They don't. They want to. It's a lot like the struggle the Kens are having, right? Where they're like, well, we'll take this patriarchy thing, we got all the Kens in the Barbie movie, right? We'll bring back the patriarchy where the men are just having what do you call it? The men just have all of their wives, their Barbies, bring them beers, and they just chill out and play guitar at the girls, and they don't they play guitar at their women. They don't play guitar for the women. They go on long digressions about mansplaining what the Godfather is. They talk about subjects they don't know about. They take over the Barbie's house. It's Ken's Mojo Dojo Casa house. It's definitely like it's like a little boy, right? A little boy going, "Oh, dojo, that's a cool word." A casa, oh yeah, casa, that's a cool word. And then house, it's because it's a house, so it's a Mojo Dojo Casa house. It's a Mojo Dojo, obviously casa house is redundant. A casa is a house, right, in Spanish. So the Kens are definitely going through some. They're definitely going through some real serious soul searching, and they kind of find the wrong answer. They're like kind of like it's like find. It is. I mean, this is not what happens in this show, but it's kind of like the global right, populist, patriarchal, extra toxic masculinity that's all kind of come about everywhere, right? In just general culture, obviously in gaming culture that I'm often unfortunately in, with all the toxic right wing gamer gay people, and so so the men are kind of swinging out in the trying to figure out who they're gonna be, and then but that obviously I shouldn't tell you too much about it, but basically like let's say that like that doesn't they're not exactly gonna work out. It's not working out. Trying to restore patriarchy in the 2020s is not something that is feasible, a good thing to do, advisable, and is only causing more problems for the society that capitalism itself, which is fundamentally kind of comorbid with patriarchy. It can't human existence and the climate's existence and capitalism are not compatible. So that's not a direction that the Kens and the men of Earth can move in. Anyways, so that's a little bit about Ken. Also, Ryan Gosling has a really the Ken musical bit is like freaking amazing as well. They did a really good job. The I'm Just Ken. I shouldn't sing any of that because I think the YouTube doesn't like when you sing or have any melodies that could resemble very large popular songs. And I know all the Barbie songs are real popular right now. So anyways, sorry, the dog is barking last time. Slightly distracted by that, but it's 12:25. I should be going soon. Anyways, so I think in the end and so like your gender role that you're playing, and part of the like roles, right? Like I was talking about earlier, like the roles that you play in the world, like astronaut, right? The work that you do, right? Astronaut, soccer player, firefighter, right? Airline worker, president, lawyer, right? Which don't necessarily have to be gendered, but but then there are genders. If there are genders in cultures that have specific roles, right? So like women at one point didn't do those things, and now women are doing a lot of these things. So even the last 80 years, there has been changes, and like and yeah, change and so like changing what is that what the inequity of um the roles which genders can play is a obviously that's a positive development. At the same time, like we said, also having I got so many tabs right now. I got like all the tabs. I got 800 tabs. So that's why I'm gonna lose the game called Silver Spook loses my tabs and has to find it. In the same way that there was a gender role where the men wore the heels and the stockings and the fancy hairpiece, the fancy hair back in several hundred years ago in Europe, which is the parent of Euro settler culture in America. And so, but trying to get you strike. But okay, so coming back to but the gender roles that are normalized can be problematic if or if you have like women. Let's see, professors on strike, right? This is another one, right? So you have lots of women that are now professors, that are now auto workers, that are now writers, and all kinds of things. But then if you lower it so that, but then but even if they're in those roles, if the roles that they're playing, then get broken into, well, there's the top tier and then there's the lower tier, then like the problems of capitalism and the problems of inequality can continue, even though on the face of it you have solved the lack of representation, or you allow women to take on different skills. And that's where like just the work, the ostensible work, this is also important, right? It's kind of like, this is one of the tricks that ruling classes will play, which is that you can call somebody still a professor, but the people that are actually called professors right now, they're not like, if you're like, just as an example, if you're a professor in the 1950s or 60s, right, in an American university, you would actually be lecturing. You might do research, but you'd be actually the one teaching the classes, right? But today, the people that are called professors, right, they're not necessarily the ones teaching the classes. The people that are called professors, they they might teach some, but the people that teach the majority of the classes now are actually these graduates. They're graduate students, they're temp hires, and they're adjuncts. They're like the lower tier of professor. So like just calling, so in people's minds, they haven't people's minds are still thinking like it's the 1950s, but it's actually operating in the 1960s. So kind of like the secret real role, or like leaving the name of something in place and the public idea of what someone is doing in place, who has a particular title like professor, like worker, even just the word worker, right? Because there's workers at car companies that are actually more like managers, right? They get paid higher salaries. They don't do a lot of the work. Their job is to try to stop the workers from striking, right? That this happened at teacher, like for example, there was the Wildcat. I talked about this I think on a Twitch stream, but there was a Virginia Wildcat strike, right? Was it West Virginia? West Virginia teachers that were out on strike. It was a Wildcat strike because there were teachers who were teaching, but they were actually also paid by the government to try to stop the teachers from striking. So they're technically workers, right? But they're like top. They're the higher tier worker. That's one way to think about it. Sometimes when people say the high tier worker, what that actually means is they're managers. They're not workers, or they might do some work, but what they're really doing is trying to suppress the bulk of the workers who produce most of the actual of the value of the goods, right? They get paid by capital to try to like a CEO, right? Sometimes the top of the capitalist subverted unions by the bosses will have a title worker, so that everybody's like, oh yeah, that's great, right? And that's why you always have to be suspicious of the union head, they'll be called a worker, but what their real job is mostly to like AFL-CIO has had this problem. Their job is to they get extra money, kind of sometimes quietly, to they get stock or they get all kind of other bribes from the capital class to try to get the workers to accept lower, less, right? Because the just one example, the when this strike happened in 2018, the teachers were supposed to get a raise of 1%, but the healthcare costs were going to go up like 10%. So they're basically they were going to lose the deal that the U.S. capitalist state of Virginia wanted the teachers to accept was a minus 9% not raise, right? And the heads of the union said, just accept it. It's great, because they were being paid like, well, they're going to get millions or whatever they were going to get secretly, or whatever good deal they got. Or when you get out of this, you'll have a job in the U.S. senator's cabinet. You can advance your career as a union leader to stomp on these teachers. So anyway, the point of that is that like, what the names of the role, right? Like even the word worker, the word professor, right? The word even writer sometimes, unfortunately, right? Calling someone a writer, like there are companies that will, like right now, like Disney is trying to they're raising their prices to ridiculous $20, almost $20 prices for their subscription services, so they can get everyone to drop down to like the service that's cheaper but it has ads, so they can reclassify what they are as something else, like broadcasting or something. So changing the name of the roles that people and entities play in society is one of the games that is one of the weapons that the ruling classes and unjust ruling classes will use against their workers, against the masses, to trick them into believing that things are better when it's not, right? So yeah, and so that's anyway. So the teacher strike, the auto workers, this has happened before, where the heads of so wildcat strike means that it's not by the rules. It's against what the union heads are saying. The union heads are saying accept this, and everybody's saying no, we don't accept that, right? There was a university California-wide professor strike in the 2010s as well, where the professors who are adjunct and temp, right? So the $150,000, $200,000, $300,000 a year, mostly white men, mostly older professors, right? Said, oh, accept this deal that we're getting from the California system, right? And all the professors that are actually making $20,000, $25,000 a year or less, right? They're food insecure, living in kind of like the writers, right? The most actors and writers are making over 80 to 90% of them are making poverty wages, like less than $27,000 a year. And they're saying like, no, I don't accept that, right? Like Drew Barrymore is like, I'm doing really great, so let's just move on. But everyone else is like, well, I mean, but we're not in the Drew Barrymore tier, Most professors are not in the $300,000 white man professor tenured tier, right? And so then they said, so that's where the wildcat strike happens. Where we're going, well, the role that, because even I was streaming the other day with a bunch of left people, and I was like, hey, the professors are not treated very well. And somebody said, well, professors make an average of $190,000 a year, and it's like, no, the role that you think is professor, right? Even Wikipedia, the news media, right? Western sources might call it, that's professors are making $180,000. Google might tell you the average professor is making $180,000, but that's only if the role, right? Right? Like, let me try that right now. What does the average U.S. professor make, right? So the average professor, is 49, 276 to 270, 120 to 220, depending on who you ask, right? That sounds pretty good, right? But then, like, what percentage of classes are taught by adjunct, non-tenured, right? 70, but this doesn't count the 75% of college classes that are instructed by people that are off the tenure track, and a lot of these are just temp. They don't count as professors. They're graduate students, right? So if you think of the professor is the people that teach college, right? It's not true. Most people that teach college classes and university classes don't count as professors, right? So that whole what was true in the 1950s and what is true now, what that word signifies in the world, in actuality, in the minds of most people, or a lot of people outside of academia, the word professor signifies, oh, you're great, you're doing very well for yourself, you probably have a nice house, you're a professor. No, most professors that teach people teach classes are in poverty, live in their cars. Like big, like we have friends here that I'm gonna put a video of up soon that taught at prestigious universities in New York State, upstate New York, and they were literally evicted from their house, and they were like food insecurity, like had to again get money from the food banks, right? So that's where the role, anyways, so that's the shifting of what the role actually means in the society versus like what the role means in the minds of people versus what the reality of that role is in the society, right? And so that's how you can, look, everything is solved because we have Professor Barbie and there's women professors. Like, yeah, but the professors are not making shit. Same thing for actors, right? Like we talked about a lot, right? Actors making terrible wages. So you would think, right? Like Kimiko Glenn, right? She was the writer who was on, she was the actress on Orange is the New Black. Dante Basco, they were like, I made 27 cents from being an Avatar, all these actors are coming out, like they're famous, right? Like I've talked about this on multiple streams, so I won't go over, but that's where the role of actor in the minds of the masses is, you're doing amazing. You have lots of money. You have a beautiful house because you're an actor. Actors are famous and wealthy because that's the role that's been implanted in our minds by Western conditioning, Western culture, Western media, news, Western film, even film is part of that process of implanting this idea of rich actors, right? Well, every actor is rich, so I don't have. Why do we care about actors, right? At the beginning of the WGA, why do I care about writers and actors, right? In the beginning of the SAG-AFTRA and WGA strike, I include myself in that, right? And that's because, so the strategy of when you normalize the roles in society is to then, in the same way that the Euro unjust feudalist society turns into the Euro unjust capitalist democracy, which is not democracy, it's plutocracy. The word plutocracy does come up in Barbie as well, so at least they acknowledge that the U.S. is a plutocracy. And so when they transform from a feudalism to a ostensibly equal and just democratic capitalism, in the late 1700s or 1800s or whenever the Western ruling class and professional liars claimed that the U.S. and Europe transformed into democracies, they never did. So women and people of color aren't in Barbie specifically women, right, are not in these roles. Well, look, now we have women doctors and professors and lawyers and everything's equal now. So they go, what? But then instead of, but now they have transformed the meaning, the role in the minds of people, is great and everyone's doing amazing. But the reality of the role is still unjust, right? It's actually, this is a new strategy that is mostly come about. I mean, as far as I know, it's a new strategy of the ruling classes that has come about within the last, 70, 80 years or so. That is, and it's definitely high priority now. So I would argue that definitely the professor and the teacher and the acting and a lot of those other strikes, right? There's writer strike. These strikes are in part, I mean, there are many things, but one of them is part of it is about educating the masses about what the reality is of the roles that are now fulfilled by many women and how not great they are actually. And how, like, it's like, hey, I'm acting in these shows, but I'm making nothing. Hey, I'm trying to start a strike fund. I'm on Abbott Elementary, and we have to do this because many of our Abbott Elementary workers are like living like less than paycheck to paycheck. We're all like on food stamps, like the people who made the super popular TV show The Bear. They're like, I live on a credit card and I can't afford the footwear to show up to my premiere, right? I can't go to the award show because I can't afford to fly or stay in a hotel to get to the award show. And I can't even afford shoes that would qualify for me to show up to this award show, having made one of the most, right, fantastic, like the UAW workers going, I can't afford the cars that I'm building at General Motors, right? I can't afford the cars that I'm making, right? You're an auto worker, you must be doing really great, right? You're unionized. Well, I mean, like, no, actually, it sucks. And that's part of what the two tiers is. Anyways, so I think I've gone off in depth on all these topics. It's time to leave. And Yeah, it's propaganda. Imagine actors and verses well off when that is materially not the case. Yeah, so so now you have the roles that are installed in people's head that these are what the roles of people are, which requires a lot of propaganda, a lot of mass lying, and a lot of complacency, and that's why the U.S. is and the capitalist Western system is falling apart, because they can't keep up this charade much longer. Given that the real bulk of their money, which is the colonies that they had in Africa, Asia, Latin America, are falling apart, and they're going with BRICS. Maduro of Venezuela is saying, "I'm really happy with my Huawei phone. I don't, the U.S. empire can't spy on me and try to overthrow our country to make more money to stick inside of their little settler colony." And so the ability to fulfill those is dropping. And so I think that so anyway, long story short, so new roles have to be constructed both for men and women and other people that are not either of those things, and hopefully that these will be more positive ones, and hopefully it'll involve a lot of musicals and singing and airbrushed on abs, so that we can keep the ratings up along with the pace in Foundation. Anyways, I'm just I have too many tabs. I just have too many tabs open right now. I have too many tabs. Thank you for watching this video. And we will be leaving now. But everything we do here, don't forget, if you're entertained, educated, gated, edutained, or discombobulated, if you want it to be, then consider supporting us through the Ko-Fi at Silverspook, Ko-Fi.com/Silverspook. Consider helping us out at Patreon.com/Neofeud as well, if you would like to help us out in an ongoing fashion. And also get access to behind the scenes of what we're working on, the Silverspook Cooperative, the Silverspook Discord, and the Silverspook University, which is, you see, I just changed the role of university. It's not a university, it's just, but it is all the content that I have been able to categorize hundreds of hours of everything I've created, categorized according to topic, and you get access to that when you become a Patreon member. And also, don't forget, you can get all the games such as Neofeud that do support everything we do on Steam. Everything we do. I created this game. This is a lot of set design. Speaking of meticulous construction of a fictional reality, like a science fiction set, as the Greta Gerwig mentioned in that article. So Neofeud is a game that is a dystopic cyberpunk adventure game in the vein of Blade Runner, but with an overlay of Game of Thrones like political intrigue, and it's about feudalism, capitalism, colonialism, and all of these systems of injustice in an anti-capitalist, anti-imperialist cyberpunk game made by the Silverspook Cooperative here. And it is also like Disco Elysium with more cyberpunk characteristics. It's like Stray, but without a cat protagonist. It's like Detroit Become Human, but it's not a AAA game made by some cringe white guy trying to talk about racism. So, which is what Detroit is. And anyway, so you can also get Neofeud on itch.io for Windows and for Mac and for Linux. You can also get Decolonators, which is a game that is a game about directly fighting capitalism and colonialism and winning in a historical context. Specifically, it's a game I made with a Vietnamese comrade of mine, and you basically kick America's ass and stop the U.S. military genocidal invasion of Vietnam. And you defeat them as a Vietnamese communist, by the way. So there's a little gender. See, like the Vietnamese women gender, it's much more based than the American women gender. The Vietnamese women gender is actual equality, and the Vietnamese women gender is your role in society can be an imperialist killer and defender of your sovereign country. See, that's like a pretty cool. Women were soldiers, unlike in the U.S. military. And also you can be a communist, and that's like an accepted normal role that for you to play, And that's a bit scary to all of the Western people though, and Western patriarchal. All the patriarchs, all of Ken's role models when he goes the Ken patriarch era, Ken's patriarch arc. They're all very scared of the Decolonators. Anyways, also you can support us by getting other games such as like this Barbie overthrows capitalism and colonialism. You can also get Indigenous Star is a game about empire arriving on your planet to eradicate and plunder, heal your land and people, prevent erasure of your native language and culture, and confront invaders before it's too late. And of course, there's also Pigeon with Gun, where you play a pigeon with a gun, kicking the butts of super rich people and liberal politicians and all politicians and a bunch of cops, and then ending capitalism in the game. So every game that I make, capitalism is overthrown always. Maybe not every time, but In Woman is a book by Holly. Speaking of patriarchy, raised in patriarchal evangelical Protestant Christianity, and it is a critiquing of that culture in a book that is a story of the Bible from Mary's perspective. It is free, or you can support us by throwing some money our way when you pick it up. You can also go and support us at Silver Spoon Games, at mastodon.social, at Silver Spoon Games at octodon.social, and also you can follow Silver Spoon Guy on Twitter at Silver Spoon Games minus the E in silver for the game stuff. We also have Instagram and Facebook. I've also just uploaded new. I have my own Barbie. I have my own Barbie Instagram, in fact, because I am not a straight cis person. I'm in fact a non-binary / trans, but actually Mahu person, which is a Native Hawaiian queer identity. But I've recently added my new Barbie. This Barbie wears chartreuse and chip black nail polish, and you can see all of my new photo shoots by following at Silver Spoon Glams if you wish to do that. Yeah, I think this one worked out pretty good. This is the first time I have not worn any fishnets in a shoot before, so I think I did pretty good. Also you can follow, of course, Terminus C. Oh, it's Barbie. Oh, Barbie is streaming now. It just got released to streaming. That's part of why it's everywhere. At Terminus C is also a show that you can find over here, and it is a game that is I'm the content director and the lead writer of this game, and it is being produced by a handful of other folks that are working on the levels and the art and the music and the programming, etc. And you can follow at Terminus C, and you can also follow Holly Argent at the Tech Fairy is, of course, producer manager with Kate Nix TV, partner with the Silver Spoon Cooperative, and of course wife also here. And Holly's role is, we try to have that role be as equal as possible. But Holly does have a role that is in part is educating, moderating, and parenting here, educating the children, and also everybody else who needs that, who need reparenting because they went to an American school and don't have any education. So Holly is also tweeting here, so don't forget to follow Holly, and Holly also has books that you can get there. And yeah, thank you everybody who has been supporting us through Patreon. Massively appreciated as always. And thanks everybody for watching. Thanks Big Teal for dropping in there. I promise I gotta remember to upload some of Big Teal's. I have this long 5-hour conversation I still have to upload with Big Teal. So, but anyways, we'll be back in the evening on Twitch to talk about lots of current news and updates and other fun stuff on the Twitch channel. And yeah, so keep your Barbies polished. Change the negative gender roles and stop the unjust hiding of the real gender, the real role from the fake role in the minds of people. And let's live life in plastic and also in